So from wherever in the world you're calling in from, feel free to drop that in the chat. I'd love to know what people do, the context in which they're asking questions. So feel free to give a little introduction in the chat. The types of work that you do in the creative arts. Feel free to raise your hand right now because I can see your faces through Zoom. Who's a filmmaker? Just to know how to cater this. Great. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of hands raised. Also, if you're able to join on camera, that's great. I love seeing a friendly face. It's going to be a lot of me talking for a bit, but we're going to do a Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I will get to take a look at that at the end here, but it's good to know that a lot of people are filmmakers. But keep in mind that the strategies that we're going to talk about today are not just applicable to filmmaking. It's applicable to all kinds of different types of artistic work, but also the skills that you're going to learn in this workshop are applicable across the board. And I think they just make for really helpful life skills and learning how to ask for the things you need in order to make art collaboratively and to fund your projects, which is why we're all here. The billion-dollar question is, how do I raise money for my project? And thankfully, this curriculum at Seed&Spark has been taught over the last 13 years. I'm not the person to originate this, but I am somebody who has learned this very deeply. I just ran a crowdfunding campaign for my next film, and we were very successfully funded. I'm not just here to sell you something. I'm really here to evangelize on behalf of a process that can work for you. Though, if you never crowdfund, I think you're better off for learning these skills. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get started. And the reason that my bio talks more than just about my work at Seed&Spark is like I practice the things that we talk about here. Um, and it's helpful to know that like it's not just Seed&Spark specific. I apply these strategies in multiple areas of my life, working as a filmmaker, working in the arts, and these are helpful strategies. So let's get really real with each other before we get started. Crowdfunding is hard, y'all. People ask me all the time if it's a lot of work, and I won't lie to you, it is. But hard work can pay off long term because the goal shouldn't be just to do all of this work for only one project, but rather to set yourself up for success for your entire career. This is about building an audience first, taking them with you from project to project, and giving yourself this foundation so you never ever have to start from scratch all over again. It's also important to note that the strategies in this workshop, again, are not Seed&Spark specific. It can be applied to audience building at any aspect of your career. And we're going to spend some time at the beginning breaking down some of the key things that make Seed&Spark different, aka Filmmaker Forward, from other crowdfunding platforms. Can I just get like a raise of hands, or maybe you drop an emoji in the chat or something, if you've heard of Seed&Spark before this workshop? I'm just curious. Okay, a fair amount of you. Okay. And feel free to raise your hand. Who's heard of crowdfunding? Okay. Okay, a little bit more. Okay, so I feel justified in explaining what is Seed&Spark, just to get everybody on the same page here. And also, you don't have to write down every single thing I say. You will receive a copy of this slide deck after this presentation. The great folks at BAVC are going to send it out along with a bunch of resources that I think are super helpful, including the link to the distribution playbook, which if you've ever been curious about how you connect your film to an audience, it's going to have a lot of case studies, a lot of information that will help you walk through distribution on your own so you don't have to pay a consultant thousands of dollars just to understand what the hell is this. Okay, so let's get into it. There is a reason that this workshop is called Crowdfunding to Build Independence. As artists, we are taught to pursue our careers in a very passive way. We're hoping to be chosen by investors, grantors, festivals, distributors, fellowships, awards voters, you name it. But at Seed&Spark, we believe in taking control of your career and making content through and for the people who actually want it. Not only because it's a lot more rewarding and less frustrating, but it's also more sustainable. And I'm going to say the word sustainable a bunch in this, and you're going to be like, what is this, recycling? No, this is the process of renewing your own energy so that you are not depleted every time you put yourself out there. And as we know, working in the arts, you have to put yourself out there constantly and at the risk of being told no. But I'm assuming everybody here isn't planning to retire after making just one film, right? We want to keep doing this for a long time, and we want to have strategies that make it feel easier because it can feel really draining. So, At the end of the day, learning how to crowdfund and fundraise better isn't just about getting your next film made. It's about setting yourself up for success for the rest of your career. Knowing who your audience is and isn't is crucial. So you don't want to treat this process as a one-time nuisance. You want to lay down a foundation for every subsequent crowdfunding campaign, marketing campaign, and movie premiere that you can build on top of every time. So with these skills, tips, whatever you want to call them, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you crowdfund. You just have to make a great wheel the first time and then perform maintenance on it so you can apply the same strategies over and over and over again, depending on the context in which you're making something. I also want to note again that the skills that make for effective crowdfunding are essential skills to succeeding in the entertainment business or as an artist, however you want to frame it for yourself. So, what's Seed&Spark? Well, Seed&Spark is the most successful crowdfunding platform for independent storytelling. We're mainly focused on film for the projects that utilize our platform, but we are also open to music, books, comics, whatever you want to call it. You know, we focus on crowdfunding for storytellers. And so there's a lot of wonderful perks that you get when you do crowdfund with Seed&Spark. You may have heard of other crowdfunding websites like Kickstarter, Indiegogo. Seed&Spark is really focused on storytelling, and our success rate is 82%. It is that high because we review each project submitted to us and provide personalized feedback based on best practices to make sure that you are completely set up for success before you ever launch your campaign. So if there are a bunch of red flags or landmines that are going to really hurt you in your crowdfunding campaign, we tell you, and we actually don't let you launch until you hit the baseline requirements. Like, hey, you need a pitch video. You can't launch without a pitch video. Or, hey, this image isn't the right size. It's not like a great quality image. If you upscale this, if you use a different image, I think this would be more effective. Or even giving you feedback on your copy and how you position your film. A real human being takes a look at your project and gives you a round of feedback. That is unheard of in the crowdfunding space. Additionally, it is worth noting that our success rate for short films is 93%. 93% of the short films that raise money on Seed&Spark hit the green light, aka they've raised 80% of their fundraising goal, which is important. Another perk to Seed&Spark is that you only have to hit 80% to keep all the money. So Indiegogo's like, there's no threshold. Kickstarter, it's all or nothing, 100% or bust. We let you hit 80% because if you can raise 80% of your goal, you can probably make the movie to some degree, but also that provides a lot of momentum that you can go and raise that additional funds because we want you to succeed. Our success rate is also so high because we do free workshops like this. We have events like our creative sustainability summits, which are 1 day free educational conferences that we hold in major cities and also regional cities. So this year we did Atlanta, New York City, and Minneapolis and St. Paul. And we had a great time. We were in person. It was free for everybody to come to it. Two workshops, two panels, and a mixer afterwards. A great time was had by all. Additionally, those resources will be again sent to you after the workshop today. Also, there are no platform fees to use Seed&Spark. That's right. Our platform does not take a cut of your money. We are relying on tips from your backers, basically. So we don't cut into your money. We can't get around credit card processing fees, but we do not take a cut of your money. That is not said at any other crowdfunding platform. Additionally, there are Patron Circle mini grants, which we'll talk about Patron Circle in a minute, but it's basically free, the opportunity to get more money for your project, and you don't have to do anything else with it. We also have followers, rewards, wish lists, and loans, which we're going to talk about in a bit, which I think are some of the best features of the platform, specifically the loans feature. So what are creator rewards? Along with these platform perks, we offer creator rewards as an extra bonus. On Seed&Spark, there are three main ways that you can support a campaign. One, money is the obvious one. That's the thing that everybody wants, obviously. But loans, again, I think it's the best feature of Seed&Spark. We're going to talk about that on the next slide. And lastly, follows. Followers are users who sign up for a campaign's updates without financially contributing yet. That's because crowdfunding done right is audience building first, fundraising second. And so we want to celebrate campaigns that successfully build their audience alongside their budget. So different follower milestones, you can unlock sweet rewards like film festival waivers, free script hosting on the blacklist, post-production discounts, and a bunch more. The more followers you get, the more chances you get to unlock those rewards. Okay, this is what I think the best feature of Seed&Spark is. And we're almost done talking about what is Seed&Spark. But this is the best feature, in my humble opinion. And I utilized the hell out of this as a filmmaker who just finished a campaign on there. So Seed&Spark campaign goals are created through a wish list. Think of it like a wedding registry. That allows filmmakers to show their audience what money will actually go towards. And then audiences can choose more specifically where they'd like to put their money, or they can offer in-kind support. So, for example, um, okay, so you can use loans for up to 40% of your campaign goal, which is half of what it takes to get to the green light. This is a very powerful way to include your community in your crowdfunding without always having to make it about money. So, for example, let's say you need $10,000 for a short film, and you have a camera package that's worth $2,000, and then you have catering that's also worth $2,000. Well, if I loan you my camera package for the duration of the shoot and you get a local business to cater for the duration of your shoot, you've just raised 40% of your campaign goal and no money had to change hands. You went to your community and it was a way to get what you needed without money needing to change hands. How much easier would it be to crowdfund if you didn't have to rely on dollars for every single thing to help hit your goal? I utilized the hell out of this on my last film that we're going to shoot in February now, and it was fabulous. It was a game changer for me, and it's a great way to involve your community, which we're going to talk about at length here. Okay, next, we have a lot of partnerships with distributors, specifically Kinema, which is like who we partnered on the distribution playbook with. We have ties in the space. Kinema is a first of its kind social distribution platform for in-person and virtual community screenings. This is becoming very popular as the distribution landscape is changing rapidly. But we can talk about that in the Q&A if you want. This is about crowdfunding today. Additionally, we do our crowdfunding rallies, which are timed crowdfunding events where everybody crowdfunds together for the potential to win additional prizes. So we did one with Gold House this last year, where the grand prize winner got to pitch their feature film at Gold Pitch at the Toronto International Film Festival and got an extra 2K for their project, among a bunch of other sweet prizes. It's a way to help incentivize your community to support your film, but also to do it and build community alongside your film. Okay. This is Patron Circle. So these are some of the patrons that give Seed&Spark money for us to give away to you. So that includes Mark Duplass, Jason Reitman, Ray Romano, Abigail Disney, Alex Kurtzman. We go to our network so that they will help fund your projects. So, for example, Ray Romano this last year wanted to help fund first-time feature filmmakers. And so we on the platform would look for projects that align with that criteria, and they would get extra money for their project and didn't have to do anything. So a free mini grant just for raising money for your project. Additionally, we have resources like the distribution playbook, and we also have a brand new resource called the crowdfunding playbook that should be launching tomorrow. Very similar to this workshop, a free open source educational tool that you can walk through at your leisure to update yourself on the current landscape of distribution and crowdfunding at your leisure, to help make sure that you're really set up for success as you are fundraising and releasing your films. Okay, now that's what Seed&Spark does. Let's talk about crowdfunding a bit. Um, let's get into one of the first hard lessons from any first time short filmmaking crowdfunding campaign. Friend and family funding is not sustainable, friends. Yes, your first campaign might start as friend funding, aka getting support from those in your immediate circles, but it shouldn't solely depend on those people for the full campaign. Crowdfunding shouldn't just be about asking everyone you've ever met for money. Yes, you want to hit up people you know at first, but you can't rely on that method completely or long term. It should be about identifying and engaging the audience that wants this specific film you're making to be made. Because if this is really about your career, then the people paying your paycheck shouldn't just be family members. Instead, it should be the people who are actually that you should actually be working for, which is your audience. So ultimately, you can move away from relying on friends and family for every single dollar by audience building. It lessens the stakes of having to hit up your friends and family constantly. The name of the game here is career sustainability, not a one-time guilt trip. So again, you want to make sure you're approaching your campaign as audience building first and foremost, because crowdfunding is just another storytelling medium. And treating it as such is a powerful way to excite rather than exhaust people, and also to make the whole process a lot less soul-sucking overall. I get the question all the time, how many days should my campaign be? And I'll say, and I always say, you're going to want it to be over after 30 days because it's hard work. And so you want the process to be fun, and making it an extension of your storytelling process is a great way to do that. It's going to it's going to help reinforce the crowdfunding mantra I'm going to say 100 times in this workshop. I think I might have. Did I? You guys lose me for a second? Was there a delay on my end? I know there was a tech issue
Yeah.
earlier.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm back now. So I'm going to say this 100 times in this workshop. Audience building first, fundraising second. Make that your crowdfunding mantra. You want to aim to uncover the most creative way to apply these best practices we're going to talk about in this workshop that makes sense for you, the kind of creator that you are, and who you're trying to reach. Speaking of, we got to talk about finding our audience, friends. Who are we telling the story to? And these are the three main questions you need to answer before asking anybody for money. Who's your audience? Where's your audience? And how the hell do you get their email addresses? Now, social media can be a useful-ish tool. We're going to talk about that a lot in this presentation, how useful-ish social media is. But here's a couple of stats to get us started. There's a 1% conversion from social media shares to actual contributions. There's a 25 to 30% conversion from direct email outreach. Why is there a disparity? Because direct contact increases your odds of getting a direct response versus the bystander effect that happens when we scream into the void, aka generally posting on social media. So let's go through two scenarios, okay? So Daniel, let's say that you see me posting on my Instagram. Let's say everybody here follows me on Instagram, okay? And I post, "Hey, I'm crowdfunding." Now, Daniel, you logged on for your own purpose. You were there to doom scroll. You were there to look at videos of cats. You were there for your own purposes. You're trying to see, when is the Odyssey really coming out? And is it really going to be up against the new live action Moana? How's that going to go? Okay. You have your own plans for why you were on social media. Versus if I send you an email saying, "Hi, Daniel. It was so nice meeting you at the BAVC crowdfunding workshop. It was such a pleasure working with you. I just wanted to let you know that, hey, my new crowdfunding campaign is up now, the one that I talked about extensively in the workshop. I wanted to see if maybe you would want to take a look at it and consider supporting it. Your support would mean the world. If you can't support it, no worries. Would you consider sharing it with your network or following the campaign on Seed&Spark? Hope you have a great rest of your day. Please let me know how I can support you. Your new friend, Sav." Now, in those scenarios, do you know which one is more effective for getting you to give me a direct response? It's the second one because I asked you explicitly what I wanted, but I was nice about it. You don't have to say yes. The worst case scenario is you ignore it and then like we don't talk again, right? Versus I'm posting and screaming into the void being like, "Give me money" on Instagram and nobody cares because everyone's there for their own purpose, okay? So, a direct ask will increase the odds of getting a direct result. That, by that logic, building your email list should be a really big priority during your campaign prep and how you approach your overall audience building strategy. And to be clear, I want to be very clear about this. When I say email outreach, I don't mean mass BCCs or newsletters. I am talking about one-on-one direct outreach. I can say this all day long in a workshop, and sometimes people think, well, not me. If I send a mass BCC, they'll respond to me better. And then they're shocked when they don't. People want to hear from you one on one. People are not money delivery receptacles, right? They are human beings who have their own money. They got their own priorities. So if you're going to ask them for something, you should be really nice about it, be really personal about it, and be thoughtful about it. It's way more work. I don't know what's
Yeah.
happening. There's somebody went off mute or turned their mic on, I think. Is everyone muted? Okay, cool. Okay. Where do we go? Okay, we're back. Uh okay. So, all that to say, it's way more work, but it's nearly 300% more effective, okay? It is so much more effective when you directly make the ask and you can get that chance of receiving a direct response, even if that's a no. And if somebody tells you no, It's fine. You don't have to rely on that one person for every single dollar because you are building your audience. So, how do you build your audience? Okay, that is a big question here. If it will let me move forward in my slide deck here. I don't know why this is happening. There we go. Okay. If the concept of getting a stranger to fall in love with your work at first sight seems a little abstract, that's totally understandable because it is. It's very hard. If you've ever written a grant application or a fellowship, you know that it's hard to persuade people to take the action you want them to take. So you have to slowly think of it as slowly building bridges to navigate strangers all the way to becoming audience members. While some people are going to skip the line and jump past some of these steps, your best long-term strategy is to focus on building each bridge individually at each step of the process. You want to think of this as your marketing funnel, where some people are going to be reached through different avenues or methods at different pacing for conversion into your audience. I know I just said that social media doesn't convert well, but its real value to you is as a bridge or brand awareness as early as possible in your process. Finding ways to get strangers funneled into your social following is your first task in audience building. So you want to focus on that and that alone before we move on to trying to convert them. By the way, this is a long-term strategy and not something that can be done overnight or over the course of a week. This is something that we're all going to start practicing together starting today. Um, because it's not something that you're going to build overnight. Talk to any social media star, okay? They built their audience over a long period of time. It's not going to be different for us as artists who are trying to just get people to take one action, which is to support a film. So you want to spend a lot of your time on these earlier bridges until you can automate your process to some degree. So let's think about how do we get somebody to become a follower on social media? Well, who here has attended a film festival? Feel free to raise your hand. Keep that up if you like ever attended a conference, okay? Who's going out in person? Who's going to local film meetups, right? There are plenty of ways to go out there and meet people. So when you go to one of these events, do you have a business card? Do you have like a little postcard with what your project is? Do you have a QR code with how people can get in touch with you? If an interaction is going well, you should try to keep in touch with people. And the first step of that is the question that perennially brings me dread is like, can we swap Instagram handles? I remember, the first time that somebody wanted my Instagram handle in a business context, and I was like, why? Like, I just post pictures on there of my dog or whatever. Little did I know it was gonna become like the biggest networking tool for independent filmmaking. And so. Now people can follow me or the movie that I'm making for future dates that it's playing or whenever we're shooting or whatever, and then they're closer to becoming actual audience members that way. So that's your first step is to have a way to get people into your funnel there. Once that first bridge is sturdy, then you just have to perform occasional maintenance on it. And then you can move your social followers towards the next bridge, your email list. And then once someone's in your email list, you'll have a ton of information on them, as well as direct access to build that final bridge from email list to actual audience, aka the destination they didn't know they needed. So, some examples of building bridges between social followers and an email list could be hosting events virtually or in real life with an email RSVP form, promoting a survey where you collect emails at the end. It can help you gather intel on your potential audience while getting their contact information. Or you can start an adjacent newsletter to help support your production company or a thematically related topic. There are a lot of ways to get folks to become your email followers in a way that is ethical and normal and not weird. Okay. So moving on. Hold on. Zoom, don't fight me. There we go. Let's talk about audience demographics for a second. Now, which strangers should you aim to build bridges for? AKA, who's your target audience? It's very common to quote a demographic like one of these when asked who your audience is. But here's a secret. These demographics do not exist anymore in the way you think they do. Now, back when we had a monoculture, right? Think 30, 40 years ago, when there were only a handful of ways to collectively share in a cultural experience when it came to film or art or television, what have you, in order to justify your film being made, your show getting on the air, you had to appeal as broadly as possible, okay? And so a demographic like this was really valuable. However, consumer behaviors were a lot more predictable when there were significantly less ways to consume media. For example, when you go to the movie theater, movies are not competing with other movies at the box office. They are competing with TikTok. They are competing with you doom scrolling on your phone. We are in an attention economy. And so consumer behaviors have shifted greatly. And so, sure, Hollywood might still spend millions of dollars trying to reach everybody in these two demographics, knowing their true audience is in there somewhere, but even they know it's bullshit. As independent artists, we don't have the kind of money, resources, or access to broad audiences like these. If you have a Marvel movie or Barbie or Wicked, you can afford to do this. But I don't think anybody here in this workshop has those resources, or you would not be here. So we have to be more specific and intentional. So let's take a closer look at the demographic of women 24 to 35. These three stock footage women have very different careers, lifestyles, hobbies, and social circles, which means that they probably watch and are interested in very different types of films, TV shows, what have you. So your project isn't guaranteed to resonate with all of them just because it does with one of these women aged 24 to 35. Also, the difference between a 24-year-old woman and a 35-year-old woman in terms of their interests is vast. Same with men, same with gender nonconforming folks, okay? Age plays a huge factor in what people watch and how they spend their time. Also, what city they live in, their background. There's so many different things that make up what a person is. You can't just boil it down to a huge a range of ages here. So you have to get really specific about who you're targeting, and that means talking to people. And I'm so sorry in advance if you are an introvert, but you have to talk to your audience. You have to ask people if they would watch the thing that you're working on. You have to pitch the thing that you're working on and talk about it in public. And if people say that they would watch the thing and say yes, you have to take the next step in learning more about them and their consumer behaviors, which we're going to talk about on the next slide. The takeaway here is lower your goal of who you think you can reach, aka don't just say a broad demographic like women 24 to 35, and start with the first bridge of trying to turn a stranger into a social media follower. Okay, let's talk about audience and how you talk to them. Okay, if we were in person, we would do this exercise all together. Everybody would get into groups of two, and you would just interview each other for a minute. So I highly recommend in the next week, do this exercise with somebody, and I want you to just ask them questions about how they watch things, why they watch things, where they watch things, and that is going to and talk to people who you think are in your audience for the project that you want to make, because this is going to give you invaluable data in how you should be marketing it, how you're finding your audience, figuring out their existing audience behaviors so you can figure out how to reach them and let them know that your project exists. Whether you're crowdfunding or whether you're marketing, this is information that you got to know. And if you were thinking, well, Sav, that sounds like somebody else's job. Unfortunately, the state of independent film has made it so everything is our job. Everything is our job, including this kind of market research. Now, on an independent filmmaking team, ideally you have people with complementary skill sets, but these are important traits to be able to know and identify when you're raising money for your projects. So let's keep going here. Do this exercise. I do this exercise too. I practice what I preach here. Okay. Now, let's talk about social media again for a second. Social media isn't the best method for converting followers into campaign pledges. We've established this. However, it can still be a valuable bridge to build when growing your audience. Before we get into how you use social for your audience, though, I want to stress that you, as the creator, need to feel comfortable on the platforms you're on in order to be authentic. And creators need to meet their audiences where they're at. So you want to make sure that you're determining which platform you should be on based on your preferences, your team bandwidth, and your audience, and that it's authentic to your project, right? So if you're doing, let's say you're doing a documentary about Meta and its role in the downfall of democracy in the United States, right? You're probably not going to be on Instagram promoting this movie. It's probably not going to be a great use of your time. If you're doing a documentary on Larry Ellison and the purchase of TikTok, TikTok might not be the best method for reaching the widest possible audience because you might get suppressed. Also, it can also be in terms of your artistic approach, okay? So, for example, uh Okay, for example here, if you see me doing a TikTok dance, something has gone very wrong. Okay, that is not my comfort zone. That is not where I feel great. And it's going to read as really inauthentic to the audience because I don't feel comfortable. And so you need to figure out what is the best way for you to meet your audience halfway that also allows you to be the best version of yourself as you are on social media. So if your audience is on, Twitter or Blue Sky, but you're not great with words, if someone else on your crowdfunding team might need to be able to target that audience if they're able to, fire off a funny, pithy tweet that can get attention. If social media isn't your jam, congratulations, that's great. You should know you don't have to force yourself to engage with a platform that doesn't vibe with you. There are plenty of ways to build your audience with or without minimal social media if it's a toxic, tiring place for you and you just don't vibe with it. Okay, let's talk about how you talk to your audience, friends. Um, So, what does speaking authentically mean to your audience? Well, high level, authenticity means telling the truth strategically. That doesn't mean lying. What I mean is, you always want to lead with the thing that's true about the work that you think is also most interesting for the person you're talking to. So, for example, if you're talking to your lead investor in a project and you're telling them about the ROI on their investment, you're telling them about your marketing plan, you're talking about, why this is a good financial investment. That's not going to be the same priority that your lead actor has, who is going to be much more interested in the arc of your character over the course of the film. What's the journey they go on? What's their wardrobe, etc. So, whenever you're talking to someone, you want to make sure it's the most relevant information that's going to sustain their interest in the project. A lot of things are true about your project, but not everybody needs to hear the exact same thing about your project because you want to cater it to their interests. Additionally, it also means engaging with your audience and not just throwing content into the void. I generally recommend that for every one directly promotional post you do, you have like five that aren't directly promotional. They can indirectly promote, like posting images from events you attend or speak at, behind the scenes photos, etc. Direct promotion means there's a concrete call to action, aka pledge, follow, repost, whatever. Direct promotion means or I'm sorry, speaking authentically on your platforms is about finding a balance between being strategic about what you share so that you're building a world that exists around the work and showcasing your taste as a viewer, which also informs your work as a filmmaker. Another way to be authentic is choosing altruism over narcissism. Walking the walk is more important than talking the talk. We want independent film to be sustainable as a whole, and supporters want to see you supporting other people. So, cross promoting with other creators is key. It also happens to remind people of why they may want to support you because you're someone who pays it forward in the creator community. Finally, this is going to be tricky for a lot of people. Use the word pledge, not donate. I know this one's hard because you might be used to saying donate when asking for financial support, but it's more impactful when you frame it as a mutual relationship between you and your audience or a potential pledger. So don't just say, please help us, we're poor. Instead, excuse me, it's getting late over here. Whew. Instead, offer an opportunity to join in and participate in creating something together. If you believe you're offering something of value, your audience can believe it too. So you want to use words like contribute, pledge, join instead of donate. Okay, so quick little recap before we move on to the second or to the final part of our workshop. If you want to find your actual audience in real life and online, you want to ask the right questions to the right people, you want to know what to say about your project, you want to know when and where to say it, and you want to identify who can help you amplify your message. And only now can you start asking your audience for things like money. Now, let's talk about momentum. We've covered the audience building portion, so let's talk about crowdfunding, the main event. Bah, bah, bah. Something to note, 90% of campaigns that succeed hit 30% in their first week. That percentage is a sweet spot where strangers feel comfortable jumping in and pledging themselves. So you want your core supporters to get you there early. That's where you ask your friends and family to come in and be like, hey, can you make me look really good in the first 24 hours of this thing? You can create that inevitability of success by building hype for a scheduled launch date and time, and also training your audience during the campaign to not tune you out. You want to do early outreach pitching to people in advance, requesting that they commit to contributing on the exact launch date so you can build security with your odds of hitting that 30% in the first week. Now, maintaining momentum throughout your campaign is as simple as having new things to say every day, even if you're just finding new ways to share the same information that's been available from the beginning, though it is better if it's mixed with some brand new stuff and reveals, okay? Now, here is the question I probably get asked most. How much? What a question. There's no magic number that anyone can raise, okay? It is about the audience that you start with. A lot of times artists will ask me, what's a creative, realistic budget here? And that's not something that I can answer without context because every film is different. And that type of question is relevant to the type of project you're setting out to make and fund, as well as the stage of funding that you're at. So you want to think about treating this like a small business. Have a plan for the full life cycle of your thing, whatever type of project it is, and know what it's going to cost. Be realistic about what you can raise in one campaign. Now that's tricky. Sometimes I get a consultation and they're like, I'm raising $1 million on Seed and Spark. And I'm like, you would be the first because raising money is hard. Raising $10,000 is hard. Raising $5,000 is hard. I just did a 30K campaign and that was really challenging. And I'm a guy who I think is, pretty well resourced, in terms of my connections within the business. And it's still really challenging to go out and ask for that kind of money. So you might want to consider raising in stages. It is often a more responsible thing to do, especially if your audience size and your total budget don't quite match yet. It's often easier to get someone to give you $5 twice over the course of a few months versus $10 all at once. And not for nothing, but if your first campaign is fun and successful, then they'll probably give you $10 the second time anyways. Just make sure that you can achieve something tangible with each stage so that audiences are going to want to support again and spread the word. For example, if you're raising, the first time for production, when you come back for the same project, it should probably be for a new phase, like post-production. If you're feeling really lost on figuring out the relationship between budget and reach, we've got a formula to start seeing how realistic your raise will be. That'll be shared in the recap email. Now, remember, you can use loans and in-kind contributions, friends. The takeaway here is don't be afraid of your budget. Ask for what you need, and if it's too high or out of reach, ask for other options, aka barter or try to find in-kind contributions. Remember the loans feature. Again, still my favorite feature on Seed and Spark. Okay, so we're going to use the example of a $25 incentive as an example for what makes a great incentive. It's the most commonly contributed amount to crowdfunding campaigns, generally speaking. So this is the principles of what makes a great $25 incentive or incentive under $100. Now, please know this is scalable to the size of your project. If you're raising $100,000 on Seed and Spark, you might want to consider this logic, but apply it to like your $100 incentive. It's got to be scalable to the size of your project because if you're spending a ton of time for an incentive that's not going to provide you much value, then you might have to reconsider. But let's say you're raising money for a short film. Let's talk about what a great $25 incentive looks like. All right. The five criteria here of what makes a great $25 incentive: visual, shareable, personal, instant, and a bonus if it's on brand. So let's break it down. Visual. Well, film's a visual medium, and a visual reward attracts attention. It also ensures that when shared, it draws the eye for other potentially interested parties. Second, shareable. Speaking of interested parties, what's the best way to turn one $25 supporter into 10 more is to craft a reward worth sharing. Well, how do you do that? Appeal to people's social nature and give them something they can't resist showing off. Because once they do, they've inadvertently given you free promotion, alerting their networks of an exciting and limited time opportunity to receive their own version. Next is personal. There's no better way to encourage the sharing of a visual reward than by making it personal. People are inherently a little narcissistic, okay? Are you more likely to share something that says, "Thank you, supporter," or are you more likely to share something that says your name and with a, profound, a sense of gratitude attached to it? It's not always a bad thing in the context of a crowdfunding campaign to make something personal. You want to give something that's just for them, that makes them feel special. Next is instant, okay? Manufactured goods like posters, postcards, t-shirts, hats, and other merchandise are frequently listed incentives, but because of how long they take to deliver and the fact that what you're funding likely isn't a current famous media property that makes said merchandise sought after, it's going to be challenging, at least not by people outside of the production. And so you want to appeal to a supporter's need for instant gratification, and while they're still excited about it and contributing and sharing by the time they get their reward. Plus, the quicker you can deliver the rewards, the less you're gonna have to work after the campaign wraps. And trust me, when the campaign wraps, you want to be done with the campaign. Your time is valuable, so try to do your campaigning work while the campaign is going, and then your production work while the production is going. Lastly, on brand. You can craft a great incentive without it being thematically related to your project, but it is always better when they align because again, crowdfunding is just another storytelling medium. And if you can extend the story of your story through your incentives, it always helps. Okay. The second most asked question I get is about the pitch video. One is, do I have to do it? Yes, of course you have to do it. People associate the quality and care of the pitch video with the quality and care of your end product. This is the mini movie that we watch to ensure that you can make the big movie. And so, if it's bad or careless, that's not a good sign. So, here's some tips to apply when you plan your pitch video. Number one, you're not friend and family funding, so it can't just open on your face. Statistically, you have 15 seconds to hook your audience before they stop watching. You need to give them a little taste of the tone and style of what you're making. So you're making a horror movie? Well, you should scare them. If it's a comedy, you should make them laugh. Then people do want to hear from the person behind it in order to connect their passion for this project. But your video shouldn't be all talking head. You should be showing while telling, like you do in screenwriting and directing. Some inputs to include is the who, the what, and the why. The who is the team behind the project. The what is your story. The story is key. You got to tell it in a compelling but concise way. And then the why. Why does this matter? Why now? Why your voice for it? What are you offering them that they're not getting somewhere else? The why is what makes people contribute and not just wait to watch the thing later. And all of that should be done in 90 seconds to 2.5 minutes. Okay, friends, this is another big one. Everybody learns this on their first crowdfunding campaign, virtually speaking, that it's really hard to do it alone. If you don't have the support in place that you need on top of everything else, you're going to drive yourself up a wall. If all of this sounds like a ton of work, it's because it is, my friends. Crowdfunding can feel like a full-time job for the length of the campaign, and most of us already have a full-time job or other responsibilities that compete for our attention. You know, full-time jobs, part-time jobs, kids, school, extracurriculars, gigs that you're doing. There are things that take up space in our life that do not revolve around raising money. And so adding something like this to your plate can be really challenging, especially if you don't have a support system. Just like filmmaking, crowdfunding is collaborative. And I'll take it a step further. Life and filmmaking are team sports. Crowdfunding is a team sport. Producers should be participating in outreach because ultimately you're building eyeballs to eventually watch the damn thing, and that benefits everyone. So getting people on board to share should be an early part of your prep work. You want to find people with different schedules. If you work 9 to 5, somebody needs to be covering the campaign during that time. You also want to fill gaps in skills. You can't design for shit. You got to find somebody on your team who can, okay? If somebody can't copyright, maybe that's something that you can do. You want to fill those complementary gaps and skills, but friends do not let friends crowdfund alone. It breaks my heart when I see filmmakers who are putting so much pressure on themselves and they only have their own network to reach out to. And not everybody has the most robust Rolodex on the planet. Not a lot of people have not done this audience development work in ways that they should have, or because they didn't know. And so when I meet filmmakers who are on their own in terms of crowdfunding, it just breaks my heart. So be a good team player when you're working on a team project, and support your fellow producers or what have you. Make sure that everybody is playing their part. And if you're really getting resistance and helping on the crowdfunding campaign, maybe they're not the right collaborator for you. That can be a very telling moment in my humble experience. Okay, we are winding down. We are plateauing this workshop here, folks, before we get to the Q&A. Thank you all for listening. Now, this is something that my Type A ass actually did nail in my crowdfunding campaign. You got to do pre-production for your crowdfunding campaign, y'all. You wouldn't show up to set without a shot list, so you shouldn't launch a campaign without knowing what you're going to be posting the second Wednesday you're live. Trust me, you don't want to have those conversations once they're live. It's annoying. Your shot list may change the day of, but you should still have a foundation that's sound to start from. The biggest thing you're gonna want to stay on top of, my goodness, is tracking your outreach and press and shares that you're getting. You're going to know what's driving traffic and pledges on any given day so that you can adjust the rest of your schedule to what is or isn't working. Now, let's talk about outreach priorities as we end this, folks. In the next few slides, we're going to hit on the order in which you should prioritize said outreach strategy as you lead up to your launch day. The thing that should take up the most time and energy is direct outreach, okay? Not talking mass BCCs or emails or newsletters. One-on-one, direct emails and messaging to people, personalized. Your general pitch may be the same overall template. In fact, I really recommend creating a template that you can customize each time, but you need to personalize it to each person's why. Again, you are building relationships here, folks. You are not just asking for money in exchange for nothing. You need to be considerate of the other person on the other side of the equation. Next is updates. Seed&Spark updates go to pledgers and followers, and they appear under the update section of your campaign page. So even after your campaign ends, you can send updates throughout post-production, your festival run, your online premiere, and let that audience know about any future short film projects, feature film projects, whatever, that are similar to your the previous themes and style, etc. Just because they pledged once, don't think that's the end of the relationship. You want to validate those who bought in early and make them feel good about that decision. People who funded my first works now get to see how I have leveled up and progressed in my own career. Um, and there are lots of ways to do fun updates that aren't just like, hi, everybody. You can do interviews with your key cast and crew. You can do event recaps from festivals, parties, premieres, etc. Fun facts or trivia about the project, pre-production diaries, storyboard to screen comparisons, or putting, inconsequential decisions to a supporter vote. It's always a fun way to get the community involved. Next is social media. As we mentioned, with only a 1% conversion, social media shouldn't be where you spend most of your energy, but it can still reach people in your audience if it matches their consumer behaviors. Remember those interviews we did earlier? This example is a combination of social media and a first priority of direct outreach. So in the last 1 to 2 days of my crowdfunding campaign, I slid into the DMs of my followers to remind them, hey, I exist and this campaign does too for the next 24 to 48 hours. That resulted in so many new backers and a 15% funding jump. It's also helpful that I use language like last day to pledge to make people who said they were going to pledge but put it off for a month to spring into action. There's also a general rule that people need to see something 3 times before they take the action you want them to take. So that initial email can give them that personal why, but seeing the momentum on social can remind them that, hey, I actually did want to pledge and support this project. All right, next is some bonus content, okay? You want to make it fun. This is audience building over fundraising, so you want to make it fun for you and the audience to be part of the process. Get weird, get specific, get creative about getting weirdly specific. Back when Facebook Live was a thing, I had a friend who hosted a Facebook Live for her campaign, and she did a trivia segment where the winner got a pizza delivered to their house from their favorite local pizza place. Now, Facebook Lives are disposable, yes, but I'm sure that person will never forget the weird day that they got on Facebook Live and got a free pizza out of it, okay? Make it fun for your followers. Okay, next, events. That's another great way to engage with your community. Have a wrap party, a launch party, a charity or cause event, networking events, etc., etc. If you make events fun for people, they might show up for you. So always consider what are some fun ways to do that. Okay. Next, this is just a reminder, but something you should actively be doing throughout your entire campaign is communicating and in your relationships, okay? This is important. This is a relationships-based business. Be a good communicator, please, and thank you. Additionally, make sure you're collecting data that matters, both during and after your campaign. Remember to keep talking to people. Again, sorry if you're an introvert, but what already worked can work again. So learn from your community and your supporters. You want to follow up with your first contributors to get more insights, which will strengthen your campaign strategy in the long run. Okay, this is an obvious one, but please, for the love of all that is good in this world, deliver on your promises. Don't ghost people once their cash or once their checks are cash. My goodness, I can't even talk. It's so upsetting. You want to have a plan to stay in touch for the full life cycle of your project. It won't just make people feel like they're still part of the process. It's going to keep you top of mind in a positive way the next time you ask for their help. And there will be a next time if you are building a career in this wild, unpredictable industry. Nobody gets through it alone. Um, okay. Last slide here, folks, before we get to the Q&A. Remember, this isn't about one campaign. This is about your whole career. So build for the next project and the next project and the next project. The key here is not to rely on the same group, but you can rely on the same strategy. The pressure on a single fan is way less high this way. You're not making films in a vacuum for the same few audience members that happen to share DNA with you. You're building a foundation. So the momentum from your campaign should feed into your next marketing plan and then your release, and then your premiere strategy, straight into your next campaign, to your next marketing plan, and on and on and on. You always want to keep building your audience. Crowdfunding is just one aspect of your year-round audience building strategy. And that's it, friends. That's the presentation. Here we are. It's time for the Q&A. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you got something out of it. You could be anywhere on a God, what day is it? Tuesday nights. But you are here, nearly 40 of you, and I'm so thankful that you are here. So thanks for listening, and I'm excited to answer your questions. All right, y'all. Oh, some nice comments here. Um, let's see. Okay. We got a question from Emma. Thanks for raising your hand, Emma. Feel free to ask your question.
Hi. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. So I had a question about that kind of $25 incentive you were talking about. Do you have any examples from your own personal work of something that was both personal and easy to get out pretty quickly?
Let's see. I think the $25 incentive we had for my last film. So my last film is called Pancake Skank. It is very fun, very silly, World of Always Nighttime sci-fi comedy. So let me share the screen and we'll just look at my incentives. How about that? Let's see. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here's our pitch video. We raised a little over 30K for it, over 100%. So let's look at our incentives. So for 10 bucks, we did the social media shout out. 15 bucks, we did the downloadable pancake skank recipe. 25 bucks, we did a sticker bundle. So we did something physical for our $25 bundle. But number one, what's important to note is that it's scalable. Number two, we have a very specific title. That we had been trying to build the audience for over a period of years. And we figured people would want stickers that said pancake skank on it, even if they never watch our movie, because that's fun. So that's the sticker bundle that we had. But something that I think works really well, actually. Let's see if, hold on, ratified, Seed&Spark. So my boss at Seed&Spark ran a campaign for a film called Ratified. And this had a really successful $25 incentive. And so it was a personal, so context. This was a movie about the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment in the United States. Basically, the U.S. Constitution did not have any language to protect gender equality. And for 100 years, they were trying to get they were trying to get a pass, something in the Constitution protecting gender equity in it. And so, effectively, because there were so many people over a period of years that were passionate about the Equal Rights Amendment, they leaned into that because it was a political documentary with a very rabid base of supporters that were like, ERA now, right? That's literally the slogan from the 70s, ERA now. And so, what she was able to do was create a personalized fact card with a fact about the Equal Rights Amendment, because this was a group of people that were extremely motivated to let the people know, hey, this still hasn't been passed, and we think it's bullshit. And
Mhm.
and so that was really helpful. And so basically for 25 bucks, you would have a fact card that was like sponsored by you. And then you would share it on social media because you were passionate about that. And so then they would reshare it and people would be like, wow, I didn't know that, right? And then so you're doing your part for like a little community activism, right? By sharing something to your Instagram story or sharing it to your whatever, right? But then also letting people know about the film. So the film was also getting promotion every time somebody did this. And it was a great reminder to people who wanted to support this movie. Oh, I haven't gotten my fact card yet. But it was a very easy way to do that that appealed to that specifically appealed to that audience. And so the key here is like know your audience behaviors ahead of time. So whether you're doing that physical incentive and sending the stickers, or you're doing an ERA fact card because you know your audience is like very politically engaged and they will share something like this, it's just about understanding how your audience behaves so that you can create incentives that back into their behaviors versus trying to change their behavior with your incentives, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I also had one more question because I'm thinking about kind of my next project. And the next project that my friends and I are talking about making is a group of hitmen, and one is a mime, one is a clown, one is a jester. And I like when you said like get out into the public, I initially thought like kind of like guerrilla marketing, like having a booth at a farmer's market, like talking to people, being like, "Do you need somebody that we need to take out?" Um, just in general, how do you find kind of guerrilla marketing works in this?
Hmm. Well, let's use the most famous example of guerrilla marketing in film history. Let's talk about the Blair Witch Project for a second. That kind of invented what we know guerrilla marketing to be an independent film today. A lot of questions on how ethical that was. Spoiler alert: it was not ethical for the actors who had no say in the matter. But you can't deny that it generated a ton of buzz. So, for anybody who doesn't know, the Blair Witch Project premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 1999. It is the most financially successful independent film in history, I believe, if you account for inflation in 1999 dollars. So people weren't sure if the movie was real or not. The premise is that a bunch of film students go into the woods to find, to investigate the Blair Witch, and then, in the course of the movie, like they find the Blair Witch, they fucked around and found out, and basically went to Sundance, and there were like, missing posters for the cast, right? But then the company was like, hey, don't, the cast wasn't allowed to be like, hey, we're alive actually. And so it generated a ton of controversy and interest because people were like, "Oh my God, these people are really dead. This is a documentary." It wasn't a documentary. It was a horror film. It originated the found footage technique as we know it today, though. And so done right, guerrilla marketing can do a lot of interesting stuff. Like when you were pitching that idea just now, I was like, oh, again, this is a TikTok bit, like, a mime, a jester, and I'm sorry, I forgot the other one. They're all out in, this like public market and, like, they're doing bits, right? That's a great way to promote your stuff. Also, it's so specific, it's so intentional, it's so within the tone of what you're doing. I will say this is not legal advice, so just make sure you're like covered on like legally. Make sure you talk to a lawyer, make sure whatever you're doing is not gonna like get you in trouble. Make sure that you're allowed to film wherever you're filming and whatever. But I think that's a super fun way to do it as long as you're, able to meet your audience where they would be. But that sounds viral to me. But what do I know? About viral marketing.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Great questions, y'all. Okay, I think we might have some more questions in the chat, but if you have questions, you can feel free to raise your hand and feel free to come on camera if you have a question or you just want to be part of the visual gang here. Let's see. Oh, people are being nice here. I don't know if I'm missing any questions, Kaylin or okay, if people don't have questions, that's okay.
Oh,
But I'm here, I'm queer, I'm ready to answer.
yeah, you were like last call for questions. Now's your chance. All right.
Okay, we've
Awesome,
got we've
Tori.
got yeah, we've got Tori and we've got Yen. So let's go Tori first because Tori's hand is up.
Sorry, I can't come on camera right now, but I had a question about, I think right now in this process, I'm struggling to find crew, and it's hard to also like, I guess, pitch people to come on to crew when you haven't crowdfunded a certain amount that you'll be able to give them or like pay for them. So like, I don't know, what advice would you give for that?
Well, um, this is something that I think I do well in my career, that also feeds into this, where it's like I always want to find the people who are like true believers in the project that we're making, right? I don't want people who think they're doing me a favor, and because there's not enough money to go around for that, certainly. I want to find the people who like are genuinely into the thing that we're making so that it doesn't feel like I think when people act like they're doing you a favor, that's a premeditated resentment. And it's totally okay to like not want to work with somebody, but when people make it your problem that they don't want to work with you because like you're not offering them enough money, you don't have enough resources, like that's just I think a recipe for disaster. And so you want to find the people who are really into the idea that you have, and you'll say, like, hey, like, we're about to raise the money. Do you want to be part of this team? And if they're like, I don't know about that, their priorities are in a different place. Like if somebody's entire livelihood relies on being crew, that might not be the right fit for you. However talented or interesting they may be, like you want to find team members that are like, I can actually afford to work this cheap. I can actually afford to give my weekend for this because you want to find those people who, again, are deeply aligned and excited about the thing that you're making. And so if you're not finding the right crew yet, maybe you're just not in the right spaces yet. Maybe you haven't found that, like, nothing's ever perfect, but you might find like a gaffer that's like, oh my God, I've always wanted to light a film like this. This sounds really fun. So again, it's about talking to your audience strategically, like we talked about, right? Um, so when you're talking to a crew member, what do they want to hear, right? Well, a sound person probably would like to do something interesting sound-wise, right? A gaffer probably would like to light something that seems interesting and looks different for their reel. A DP would probably love an opportunity to be really creative and collaborative with a director. And so it's about finding the people who are going to fit in nicely to the vision that you have for it, but also make it better and feel like they have a genuine creative stake in the process. Ultimately, the buck stops with you. But when you're crowdfunding, it's about what the money gets you, right? And so it gets you the opportunity to work with these folks, right? But also, you don't want to find people that are like, my day rate is like 800 plus my kit fee for your short film that's going to take place over the course of the weekend, because that's not realistic to probably what you're able to do and create. And it might just like add a bad vibe to sets, if they're only there for the money and they're not going to be, like interested in the creative process for it. So that's what I would say. Like people aren't evil for that, by the way. It's just like a difference in priorities, and you want to make sure whoever you're working with has similar priorities to you so that there is that ability to gel and get really creative together. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Again, not evil to want money and to be compensated for your work, I promise. But it's just like you want to find people who are on the same page as you, one way or another. In the same way that if your priority is making money, and you want a really experienced PA, you're probably not going to hire the PA who's super green out of film school and doesn't know any set etiquette, right? It can work both ways. Okay, Yen, did you have a question before I go to Robert?
Yeah, I did. What's up, Seth? Long time no see.
Good to see you.
Yeah. I I guess like for me, especially now in like this day and age that we're living in, let's be real, the world we live in is really shitty. We're seeing, so many families get detained. We're seeing people lose SNAP benefits. We're seeing people dying in Gaza, Sudan, Congo, and all these things, right? And all these like humanitarian crisis that's constantly happening in the world here and there, right? And there's always going to be that other person who has it a lot worse than us, right? And so my question is, how do you still, have, I wouldn't say will, but, still be able to be like, hey, I'm raising a crowdfunding for my film. Can you support me while there's a shit ton of other things that's happening in our world that, you know, other people would really, really need the money a lot more than we could. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, by that logic, we wouldn't ever have money for anything, right? So let's think about like art as resilience, okay? How many amazing films came out during the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic? How many films talked about what was happening? How many films provided comfort to people while that was happening? Like everybody has their role to play in the rich tapestry known as our world, right? And some people are going to choose to participate in other ways, right? So I think about my own work. I'm not the guy to make a documentary about what's happening in a war zone. That's not my artistic sensibility. That's not where I fit into the tapestry of this. But I do seek to provide comfort to people who would like to forget about their troubles for 15 minutes. Specifically, I'll use myself as an example here. I like making films about queer people that are not about the worst things that have ever happened to us, because there's a lot of that. And there's a lot of people who tell that story a lot better than I do. And so I'm really locked into my artistic point of view, and this is where I can contribute, right? Is to, tell a story that provides comfort. if we're only focused on suffering and pain, it becomes unsustainable. We have to find hope. We have to find things to look forward to. The stories that we tell are, the stories that we tell are like a rich oral tradition from the dawn of man being able to communicate with one another, right? It's how we've passed the time for as long as human beings have existed. And we tell a lot of different types of stories. And so I don't think that you can compare, yourself to like a No Other Land or an Israelism or, if you want to talk about those specific films, right? Because those films were locked in with filmmakers who had that specific point of view. So I think you have to think about like, what do I have to offer that I think would maybe provide comfort, or is just a story that I think is important to get out there? I don't think we can compare the need to create art to, solving governmental crises, basically. And also, there's room for a lot of things. There's a lot of money in the world. And let's be real, it's being hoarded by like a couple of guys. And so, why are we taking the blame for the fact that there's no wealth distribution in this country? Like, I don't know, I don't presume to know everybody's politics here, but it's like, why do we have to feel guilty because they're not allowing more money to go around, right? Meanwhile, we're actually trying to create jobs in this climate, right? I think it's about thinking about what the money gets you too. Like, it's hard to go out and be like, well, my vision, and but don't think about it like that, you know? Think about like, actually, I'm gonna pay a group of kick-ass people to do their art for a couple of days and do labor and like they don't have to take this other shitty survival job that they hate while we're working together. So you can think about it in a lot of different ways, but I just don't think it's fair to put all that pressure on yourself, right? Like there are bad things happening, but like the people need stories to live. Joan Didion said that. We tell ourselves stories in order to live, right? Joan was pretty smart. And so I would just like remove that pressure from yourself. And if you want to make a film that's like, yeah, I want to cover this topic because I think I'm the right person to tell this. And I want to provide information. I want to change the world. I want to do that. That's awesome. But also, you don't have to force yourself to be that because there's going to be an audience that's interested generally in whatever version that is most authentic to your voice. If people, we were talking before this, we were talking about how one year a film that I directed was in competition with Bye Bye Tiberius at a film festival. And it's like, well, the commonality between those two films is that they were documentaries, but they were very different audiences. And that's great that there's enough room for both of those films to be in the same competition at a world-class film festival. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where my brain goes is like, there is room for everybody. Everybody's got their part to play, but like, don't beat yourself up if you're not like, Malala right now. Everybody has their specific role to play, whether that's at the micro level within community or the macro level. And so that's my 2 cents. To answer your question?
Yeah, no, awesome. Thanks. I think it's just so hard when we live in a capitalist, world where, oh, like how much of your story, like how valuable is your story compared to this other person's story, right? When really like there shouldn't be any of that kind of scaling to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, I'll also say like fascists are not thinking about how much space they're taking up. So like take up some more. Robert, over to you.
Thank you very much, Saab. That was great. Yeah, I just before I asked my question, I remember I was talking to a development like director of a nonprofit, and she was like, if you're ever afraid of asking someone for money, like a donor, like they probably just spent $3,000 on a purse. So like you can ask them to donate $500 for your short film. So like do not have any people waste money all the time. So don't have any hesitation about like doing something meaningful as a supporting a film or an artist. But like and sort of on that, I was wondering, I have kind of two questions wrapped up into one that I'll try to wrap up into one is that do you have any advice from your own personal experiences about working with uh, like engaging foundations or nonprofits in terms of engaging their sort of getting involved with them or sort of creating a partnership with them or even receiving money from them if maybe you don't have a prior relationship to them in terms of how to go about like emailing them in terms of like are you giving them everything all at once and being like, here's my project, can you help me donate it? Or is it more like, do you sort of, hey, could we talk for 30 minutes and you give me some advice? Maybe ask for advice first, or like to sort of and giving them a little bit, but the sort of seeing, I don't know, kind of nurturing that relationship, and then sort of when you get to the ask and how direct should you be? Oh, yeah, if you had any thoughts on that kind of stuff in terms
Yeah,
of organizing foundations, yeah.
it's a great question. So, how do you approach foundations, nonprofits, places you want to partner with, places that potentially have money that are really aligned with the thing that you want to make? I'm gonna just say it's like dating, right? And so it's 100% like dating. All relationship building is basically dating to some degree, right? Where it's
Mhm.
like you gotta play it cool at first a little bit. Where it's like you can do the cold reach out, but you're not gonna like be like, hey, let's get married immediately, right? So what you want to do is, just start focus on building the relationship. And it's like really intimidating when you're thinking about it from an institutional perspective of like, let's say we have a general meeting at Netflix. Okay. Let's use Netflix as the example. The biggest streamer in the world, biggest studio along with Disney, right? But you're not meeting with all of Netflix. You're meeting with one person at Netflix who has hopes and dreams and a personality, likes, dislikes, etc., right? And so you want to get to know that person and start building a relationship with them. And so typically in the context of like what I find to be most successful is like, well, one, do you have somebody who knows somebody at one of these places that you're trying to get in with, right? Would they be willing to facilitate a personal introduction? I think that that's always the best way to go in is to like be like, hey, do you have a contact here? I'd really love to build a relationship with somebody at this organization because of X, Y, or Z thing. And if you have a good relationship with that person who's willing to connect you, and you're like showing that like you have a good reason for wanting this connection and not just because, a lot of the time they'll give you that introduction. And so then you have a general meeting. Who's been on a general meeting before? Raise your hands, maybe drop emoji in the chat. Okay,
Mhm.
so a general meeting is basically a date, but for business. And so you show up, and they're just trying to see if you're a good hang. And also, you should also be trying to see if they're a good hang, right? So you're gonna like talk to them, and be like, "Oh my God, like what a beautiful office," or "Oh my God, I love your background. What is that painting?" Right? You ask them questions about their life, and you try to build like a genuine relationship with them. And then you're gonna be like, "Well, thank you so much for like taking the meeting with me. I'm really excited to meet you. I've always been interested in the work that, this organization does. Could you tell me a little bit more about, your role in the organization? And then you can talk about what you do. Well, I wanted the meeting because I'm doing this kind of work, and this is the kind of work that I'm doing. You're not pitching immediately, but you're being, specific about like, well, this is why I wanted the meeting. Because if people don't know what you want from them, then it's kind of like okay, like, like you're just kind of like sitting there and nobody knows what anybody wants and nobody's being clear. But they basically just want to see, like, are you a good hang before you jump into business together, right? And so you're going to go on a couple of dates with people probably before you decide if you're going to get married. Similar thing with business propositions. They want to know that you're reliable, that you're nice to deal with, that if they get into business with you, it's going to be a winning proposition for them. They also want to get to know your work. And so, like, why do you care about the work that you're doing? Can you speak with passion about the work that you're doing in a way that's considerate of the other person on the other side of the equation? That's my best take on what I found to be successful. I would say that like building relationships with folks is something that I excel in my career. And it's just like because I am really interested. Like I didn't get into filmmaking because I wasn't nosy. So I'm always curious about how other people live. I'm always curious about like what are their interests, what brought them to there. It's also one of the reasons that I'm a documentarian is like real people are fascinating. And so if you can have the combination of like consideration and genuine curiosity for other people, I think it's very predictive of how successful you can be in those relationships. And then you also want to make sure, obviously, that the thing you're asking for is aligned with something that they actually do. And so at the Transgender Film Center, I get a ton of people who email me, right? Being like, hey, like, could you fund this film? And I'm like, well, no, we only fund things through our specific programs. And so I always have to say no to those emails, but I'm like, I'm curious, I'd love to meet with you. I think that's really interesting, but I can't just like give you the money that you're asking for because that's not what we do here. We only give money through these specific initiatives and programs. And so you want to make sure that before you make a specific ask that could potentially be isolating, that you understand what they do and like how what their process is because they might have to run it by a bunch of other people. It's usually not going to be like cold email, I receive money. And so again, relationship building, being considerate of who's on the other side of that, and then seeing who else they might be willing to introduce you to at the organization. Seeing who else you can meet, how you can you build relationships, can you go to a mixer they're doing, can you support their work in any kind of meaningful way, can you also be of service to them as you were asking for something. I think that those are always the best way to approach those foundation nonprofit partnership types of relationships. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any more questions, y'all?
Sab, I'd like to ask a question,
Amazing.
please. Firstly, thank you so much. It's been super interesting. Just following on from the last question, I've been working on a docudrama for the last 3 years, very much centered on sort of Jewish themes. And so I've been applying to foundations and for many, many grants. And really, it's those applications that get you money. I mean, I've never come across a non-profit or a foundation that will just hand over the money. They have a very rigid process. It's not easy, but um, do you have any thoughts about family foundations? I mean, they're a little bit different from perhaps the Jewish Institute or the ITVS route, but family foundations. I mean, have you had an experience with sort of approaching them? I mean,
Yeah. I'm curious. I mean, I'm curious about your relationship with that because I haven't personally. I mean, like I've worked with people who have family foundations, but
mm,
like that's not the way that like I was introduced to them. So like, sometimes when I'll receive money from like a donor or an investor for, a variety of different types of work that I do, it'll come from a family foundation. But it's because I just like met somebody and they really vibed with the purpose of it. I wasn't introduced through that context. So I'm curious, like, what have been the landmines from you? Maybe we can learn from you here.
yeah, no, I haven't. I haven't actually approached the family foundation community per se. It's been more in the Jewish Institute, institutions that are very focused on telling Jewish stories. But of course, we also have that other area too of family foundations. And I think identifying emails and names, I think would probably be a good step. And then I guess it's just really the cold email approach. Um, but yeah. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think a cold email that's considerate, like just asking if, there's somebody at the foundation that you can meet with, this is the type of work that I do. I think it would be
mm,
of interest because of X, Y, or Z thing. Though, of course, when you get the warm introduction, it's always, a nicer, easier handoff to be able to get that general and to, it's an immediately warmer feeling when you're in the room.
totally. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish I had more info for you, but maybe next time I do something like this, I'll have some more info.
Sure,
Now I'm
sure.
like, oh, now I'm like, I gotta meet more people at family foundations. Okay, Brenda.
So for the sticker bundle, how was the process of reaching out to an artist, or was there an artist on your team that was able to design those? Thank
Oh
you.
yeah. So one of the best things about my job at Seed&Spark is that I met Cameron French, who is he was working in customer support on one of the sides of the business, but he was like this amazing artist. And so I just dropped his website in the chat here, but like he's like this brilliant artist who like happens to like share a day job at the same place as I do. And he's like a genuine cinephile. And so we just developed a friendship. And he was like, I would love to like make a poster for Pancake Skank, and that's really how it started. And like I was like, wow, you would want to do something for this? That's amazing. Like you're genuinely so talented. And I love his brand ID work, and I hired him to like, redo the logo for my production company and all kinds of stuff. And so I found that in the process of this, like the takeaway is like, you never know someone's skill sets. Just being open and curious about other people can often lead to other opportunities for collaboration if you're just putting yourself out there and like saying what you do. Because I was like, maybe that, like I meet tons of cool people that I never work with in that way, but when they express an interest and put themselves out there, asking you shall receive sometimes. But in terms of like, finding designers for projects, I always just like look at film posters or merch for other people's work, and I'm like, okay, like who did this kind of work? And I'll ask the filmmakers directly, and like, hey, do you have recommendations for designers? And sometimes if they're really purpose aligned, they'll be like, I'll do this at a discounted rate or whatever. But a lot of the times I try to just like pay them their full rate. Designers always get screwed over in the process. They usually have a one-time flat fee they usually discount significantly. So that's been my process with designers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns? It's almost 8 p.m., y'all. You're still here. Well done.
Yeah, thanks for being here, everybody. Yeah, if there's no other questions, making sure, don't want to leave anyone out. But I could start closing us out from Bayback. But first, just want to say thank you so much, Sav, for we are so glad that we had you for this last like hour and a half. It's been so insightful and also very relatable as someone who is on the Bayback fundraising side. I think a lot of the things resonate for organizational fundraising too. Um, for sure, some helpful tips for everybody in there. Yeah, and we're also so appreciative to everyone who's stayed on this call for joining us today. We're so glad to have you. I'm going to put a link in the chat and then share my screen really quick with a feedback survey. We would love to hear from y'all about how we did, how you found this session. Let me present this really quick. Hold on, my stuff is. All right. Yeah. So if you want to take it on your phone, QR code up there and also the link to the Bayback socials. But please tell us how we did. We're in the midst of planning our slate of workshops and things like this for 2026. So now is a perfect time to tell us what you want to see next time, what you need more information about. But yeah, and if you want to stay engaged with Bayback before the year ends, if you still want more before 2026, I would love to invite you all to come to the BAVC Media Maker Fellowship Pitch and Party event. That's happening December 10th at the Roxy Theater here in San Francisco. You're going to get an exclusive showcase of the 6 outstanding documentaries that are in progress from our 2025 Media Maker cohort. And we would love to see you there and to hear your feedback about how this went. Yeah, and just all my thanks. Be in touch. We'll be in touch with the resources and all of that good stuff in the next couple of days.